Good morning, everyone. Thanks all for joining this webinar about hybrid licensing. My name is Bastiaan van Dorsten, and I'm a pre-sales consultant for the SRM division of SafeNet. And today I'm going to take you through two main topics. So first, we're going to have a look at what hybrid licensing actually is and what benefits it brings. And secondly, we're going to have a look at how our licensing solution can help you as software vendors to leverage all the benefits of hybrid licensing. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit them through the BrightTalk interface. I will try and answer some of them in the presentation. So the scene of cloud has changed the way software vendors sell software and do business. And a result of those changes are live licensing, so real-time visibility and control in licenses and license terms, and yet a growing importance of usage tracking and usage data, and also hybrid support, so the ability to support licensing for both on-premise and cloud deployment types. And today we're mainly going to discuss this last topic. So we see in the market that it's getting cloudy, and that's based on IDC's research and Frost & Sullivan's research and case studies. And they've said that by 2015, $1 out of $6 will be consumed via SaaS. So it's really a growing business and a growing way of doing business. And this affects the ways that software vendors develop software and do business massively. I'm trying to move to the next slide. Yeah, there we go. So on the left you see a traditional and a linear business process. And traditionally, business processes tend to have a beginning and an end. So development starts at some point and it finishes when the software is ready for delivery. And another example is sales sells software once to the customer, and then the customer starts using that exact piece of software for some time. Now, moving to SaaS, Forrester's research found that ISVs move to a more continuous business process. So it's an ongoing process, not several processes that maybe run at the same time, but it's a continuous cycle of business processes. And all parts of the business process can run simultaneously, and things like Scrum development and processes to easily add functionality allow for process development and sales processes to run at the same time. Now, how does this affect the way that software vendors sell their software? Traditionally, where there's a one-time sale, where your customer buys a piece of software and maybe they're charged for maintenance to get support and upgrades. And in the continuous business model, the sell is continuous, so customers can be charged on a monthly basis or based on the usage of the software. So on the functionality side, where traditionally the features are included in the software, the pricing and the license models are fixed. Now, in the cloud world, customers can buy and use parts of the software in the cloud as and when they need it. So it can be varying in quantity, how many users they need. It can be varying in functionality, so what functions and features, and for how long does the customer actually need that functionality. To give you an example, if, for example, you buy Microsoft Office, you know exactly what suite you bought and what it contains. So for the standard edition, it could be Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And for the professional edition, you get Access and Outlook on top of that. Now, on the SaaS side, you could buy a subscription to Microsoft Office 365 and turn on and off features as and when you need them. Another difference between the linear and the continuous business model is that the thing that the license is locked to. So traditionally, a license is locked to a specific computer or server, where on the SaaS side, it doesn't really matter from what machine the service is used. It's more the person or the company or the identity that uses it that counts. So whether the user consumes the service from a PC or an iPad, it doesn't really matter. The user's identity determines whether he can consume the service or not. Now, the fourth thing that I'd like to mention is reporting. So in the traditional way of licensing, your customer would only have visibility into what they're using internally. Whereas in the SaaS space, you and your customer could potentially also have some insight in what other people that use the same service are doing. So let me give you an example. If you're looking at on Amazon for a wireless mouse, for example, there's a good chance that Amazon will show you products that other customers who also bought the wireless mouse were interested in. Or another example, if you're listening to Dire Straits on Spotify, it shows you other bands that Dire Straits fans tend to listen to. So there's a lot of information in the system, and you can leverage that to show your customers what others are doing. And the last thing I'd like to mention is disconnected backends versus the connected backends in the cloud application. So in the linear model, once the license is activated on the user machine, there's no connection to the backend, so no way to receive feedback from what the user is doing, and no way to easily change the license. But on the cloud application, this application is always connected to the backend, so allowing for real-time usage information and the ability to update services and licenses on the fly at any time. So to recap on this, where do we actually see the evolution on licensing taking place? And the first thing where we see it is in live licensing. So the ability to have real-time visibility into what licenses a customer uses, but more importantly, real-time control over that license. So if you enable a feature for a customer, it's immediately visible in the GUI. And the other way around, if you disable a feature or a complete license, it immediately affects the service that the customer can consume. So you've got great control over the licensing and the license that your customers have. The second item is usage tracking and metering. So cloud licensing allows you to have real-time information as to how, when, and how much, and by whom the system is used. So information can be aggregated and be used as a basis for billing and business intelligence. Now, assume for most of you, you're currently not in a position to have a fully cloud-based offering. But I think it's fair to assume that some, if not most of you, are thinking about moving parts of your software to the cloud. And this is where hybrid licensing comes into play. In that case, in an ideal world, you would have a licensing implementation to deliver an application both on-premise, in the cloud, or maybe even as a mixture of both. So I'd like to discuss that concept in some more detail. And I'll leave the on-premise licensing part for now as is, because I assume that you're very familiar with that. So let's have a look at what live licensing actually is and what the benefits that could bring to yourselves, but also to your customers. Because of the nature of the live license, as we call it, it's in the cloud and it's always connected to the back office. And that allows you to change licenses on the fly and have real-time connection with your back office systems like ERP or CRM. So for example, if a customer orders an additional module, this order could flow into the licensing system automatically and will affect the customer's license immediately and in real time. So as mentioned before, the license is not locked to a specific machine, but rather to a specific user or a company. And this provides more flexibility and elasticity to the end user, as he can use the service from any device and on any location. The third thing is usage data. It's collected and available at real time, and aggregated usage data could flow into your ERP system automatically and feed the billing processes to your customers. Again, I'm trying to move to the next slide. Take some time, apparently. Okay, there we go. So what are the benefits of life licensing? I think there's two components, and maybe the first one is most important. So what would your customer's view be on life licensing? So what would it bring to your customers? How can you improve the service you deliver to your customers? I think, yeah, it's a great experience. It could be a great experience from the customer's perspective, because as soon as he places an order for your software, the license will become effective. There's no need to wait for a dongle or to activate software on several machines. And besides that, when the customer is using the license, the application can provide feedback on the user's information. So back to the customer, so he can know exactly how many days are left on the license, how many executions are left, and maybe even in the application itself purchase upgrades or extend the license or buy an additional module for a week because he needs to do some special project. So it offers great flexibility for the customer also. So from your own point of view, so from the software vendor's point of view, of course there are also some advantages. For example, faster delivery of licenses. So there's no need to ship out dongles. There's no cost involved in shipping out the dongles or tracking if they arrived. There's no need to support customers with license activation. And all that is because the license is already in the cloud. And customers don't have to activate because the license is not locked to a specific machine. Another thing is that you've got real-time control over the licenses you sell to your customers. And because the licenses are online, you can always check if your customer is still in compliance. And I've mentioned it a couple of times before, but because there's real-time usage collection, you can support additional business models like post-pay licenses, and that's all very easy to do. And all the usage data you can also serve as an important source for business intelligence. So to add some more detail to that topic of use tracking and customer intelligence, the usage tracking basically provides information about how your customers are using the service. So questions like who's using the service, or in which geo is the service used most, or in which verticals in the market is this product used most, they're very easy to answer because of that real-time usage data that the system collects. And besides that, the usage collection can also give you a very granular insight in what features of your product your customers are using, and also for how long and how often they use them. Now, what benefits would that detailed customer intelligence give you? So first of all, it allows you to build a better offering, because you always need to keep the customer experience in mind, and because the customer eventually will pay for your service and they will assure your revenue streams. So it allows you to do a better offering. And so there might be a question like, do I know where to direct my engineering investment? And if you're a product manager, then you want to know what features are used most by your customers. And this allows you to direct the limited R&D investment and resources to get the most value out of them. And on the flip side of that, you also want to know what features are not being used frequently at all, or maybe the features aren't used at all. So this allows you to de-invest and stop wasting resources, or alternatively, uncover new ways to do business. So if a feature has limited appeal or limited use, it could be an opportunity to create a new package and monetize the service and that package differently. So shrinking your basic package by reducing mostly unused features also reduces the customer's perception that they're paying for shelvers or for software that they're not actually using. And it creates an opportunity to upsell to new packages that do include those features for customers that actually need those features. So, for example, maybe a piece of CAD/CAM software offers a sharing or a printing feature, and monetizing this feature offers upsell opportunity. So, allowing you to even have different business models. So, a subscription plus per usage model, or even per user. And the customer usage data can also be leveraged to improve your customer satisfaction. So, for example, by implementing a transparent way of showing the customer how they're using the product and how that maps to the value that they're getting from the system. So traditionally, most software vendors develop on-premise software, so desktop software, but with the licensing concept in mind, many of them start deploying parts of their products or even complete products to the cloud. And the ability to deliver applications both as on-premise and cloud applications is what we call hybrid. Now, I've taken a very simple example, and I assume that most of you have heard of Google's online photo service, Picasa. It's a very well-known service that allows people to share their pictures with other people. Picasa is a typical hybrid application and can be delivered both as an on-premise app and also as a cloud service. So Picasa's users can download the Picasa applications from the internet, or simply go online, log into the Picasa website and use that same service. Now, Google basically allows their users to use Picasa from any location, whether it's installed on the user laptop or accessed from an internet cafe anywhere in the world. It's accessible. It's always accessible. Now, the question is, why would you, as a software vendor, want to be able to deliver your software both on-premise and from the cloud? And what's in it for you? So I think the first and main benefit that with a cloud application, it's easier to test new business models. To give you an example, if you're thinking about delivering a new edition of your software, let's say a light package with limited functionality, it's much easier to give that a try in cloud than in the on-premise world. Or if you'd like to see if your customers are interested in a post-paid license model, the cloud is the easiest way to give that a try because of the real-time usage collection. Another benefit is that delivering a hybrid application allows your customers and your staff to get used to working with services and at a slow pace, at their own pace. And there's no need for a big bang approach. You can start small and then gradually expand the cloud functionality. Also, staying ahead of competition can be a reason to choose for a hybrid solution. So you could have a solid core of on-premise software, and then as market demands change, you can easily add functionality in the cloud. There's no need for your customers to redeploy your software in your organization, but still they can use the latest functionality from the cloud. And because of the flexibility in licensing you have in the cloud, your customers can choose exactly what parts of the services they want to use. So what does SafeNet have to offer for you as a software vendor to support you in the process of supporting a hybrid delivery model? First of all, we provide a common set of licensing APIs that can be used both on-premise and in the cloud. And this will allow you to easily share source code between the two applications, and maybe even have a common code base in both applications with a different presentation layer on top. So that's number one on this slide. Number two, you can have a true cloud elasticity, because our licensing solution isn't tied to any instance or any information or any hardware components. And this allows you to spin up and scale as needed and have redundancy, all with the same assurance that these decisions don't affect authorization rights of the end users of your applications. The third feature is when deploying the application on-premise. An internet connection isn't always guaranteed. So Sentinel Cloud offers the ability for the application that's deployed on-premise to lose connection but maintain the authorization rights locally using secure licensing techniques. So even when offline, the usage information is collected, cached, and then sent back to the server when the connection is re-established. The last feature to discuss in this slide is the back office operation. Now, with Sentinel Cloud, you get a single back office component delivered in the cloud that provides a single provisioning interface regardless of the deployment type. So you can license your application once, and then during the creation of the entitlement for the customers, you can determine whether the entitlement and the license are for an application that was deployed in the cloud or on-premise. So you will also see a common set of business metrics flowing into the system for your application deployment, and you will be able to highlight trends between the different deployment types. Now, how does this work in Sentinel Cloud? So what we see here on this slide is the architecture of a hybrid application that has a Sentinel Cloud implementation for licensing. So on the top of the screen, you can see the cloud component of the application with the Sentinel Cloud APIs embedded. And those APIs enable feature-level access and use tracking. And the other component that's present at the service tier nodes is the Sentinel Cloud runtime. And this component is responsible for the local authorization decisions, such as check if the expiration date of the license has not been reached. And for authorization decisions that require a global view, like prepaid and concurrent license models, the runtime communicates with Sentinel Cloud Connect, as you see on this slide. And furthermore, the runtime passes the collected usage information to Sentinel Cloud Connect. So both the API and the runtime are also present in the on-premise part of the software on the bottom right of the screen. And the functions they perform are very similar. The only difference is that in the on-premise application, the license can go offline because a constant internet connection cannot be guaranteed. And therefore, the runtime enforces a maximum amount of time that the license can be offline. And this can be configured in the license's property for a specific entitlement. Now, when a machine goes offline, the Sentinel Cloud runtime stores the collected usage information locally. And as soon as the connection is back, it passes that information back to Sentinel Cloud Connect. So you will always have that licensing information available from the system. I've mentioned Sentinel Cloud Connect, as you see on this slide, a couple of times already. This is the component that is aware of all the runtimes that are online and whether they're on-premise or in the cloud. And it's responsible for pushing the license updates to those runtimes. So as soon as a change in a license needs to be propagated through the system, the Sentinel Cloud Connect will update the runtimes that are up and running. Another thing that it does, it's aggregating the usage data, and it handles all the license requests that require a global view. Like I mentioned before, prepaid and concurrent licenses are all handled from Sentinel Cloud Connect. The last component in this architecture is Sentinel EMS, which is our entitlement management system. Now, this is the system where you can keep your customer and your contact information, and where you can manage your service catalog, where you can set up entitlements for your customers, and where you can run reports on different aspects of licensing. Well, EMS has a front end, a web front end, but you can also fully integrate it with your back office systems, such as ERP and CRM, and this would really impact the way you fulfill orders and basically make it a seamless experience for your people internally. Now, if you look at the licensing lifecycle, the Sentinel Cloud solution can basically support you in all the stages. So starting at the top, the definition stage, it allows you to define your catalog. This means that you can set up the features that you want to monetize and bundle those features flexibly into different products and packages. The next step would be to provision your users, so give your customers access to those packages and configure the license streams in which they can use those packages. The next step is implementing the APIs in the application and basically controlling the licensing. So using the APIs and the web services, you can do license checks and actually enforce the service agreement that you have with your customers. And then as the customers start using the service and the software, the usage data is automatically captured and transmitted. So you've got real-time information in what your customers are doing. And like I mentioned before, based on that business intelligence, that usage data, you can modify your offering or change your R&D capacity to divert it to other parts of the software. And then the circle is closed because you can define new services and new bundles, new features maybe. Now I'd like to take you through two different success stories of companies that have leveraged a hybrid business model. And the first one is QuickBooks. And some of you might have heard of QuickBooks, and has been around for years and as a typical piece of desktop software for accounting purposes. And a few years ago, they decided to expand their services to the web and basically support hybrid deployment. Now, the main advantage for their customers is that they can offer their customers with this model is that the customers end users, so QuickBooks end users, can access the system from any location and always have up-to-date information. So they're not bound to their office desks, but they can look into the numbers from home, or if they have to, on an airport, even if they're traveling and need some information. So what QuickBooks did quite smartly is to leveraging all the data that they have to be able to report industry trends back to their end users. So similarly, like the example I gave you before, where Amazon shows you products that other customers bought. Now the next example comes from a company called TurboTax. They're mainly working in the US and very successful in the US and support their customers in applying for tax refunds. Now they leverage the cloud power to do some things that they never could have done in a purely on-premise application. So for example, their application always shows the latest tax laws and backs up the end user's data online. So there's no risk in losing data anymore. And if you look at the TurboTax website, you'll see that they offer different packages for different people. So TurboTax's customers can take the bundle that fits their needs and adapt those packages at cloud speed as and when they need it. Now, from our experience with previously mentioned examples and other customers, we find that a successful implementation of cloud and hybrid licensing usually covers the following topics. So it allows software vendors to enforce the license terms and keep their customers in compliance. It allows software vendors to easily make modifications in their service offering. Third, it allows vendors to quickly shift between business models and really fit the need of how their customers want to consume the service. And it allows more licensing models than just the typical simple subscription model. It provides critical business information based on the usage data, and such a solution would allow integration with other back office systems for seamless order entry and automated billing. Now we've come to the end of this presentation now, so let's see if there's any questions. So I'll give you a couple of seconds if there are any questions to ask them. I see there's no questions been submitted yet. Okay, there are some questions coming in. So the first question is, how does this work together with encryption of binaries, e.g. using the envelope, the IP protection tool? That's a very good question. So there's two aspects of that. And the first one is that if the software is deployed in the cloud, then it's assumed to run on a secure environment. So you could assume that the software is that people cannot hack into the web servers because they are protected, and well, there's security measures to prevent that. On the on-premise side, you're running the software in a more vulnerable environment, so to say. So it would be wise to apply some protection in that space. I can say that to support the offline connectivity for licenses on-premise, we leverage our on-premise licensing technology that we currently have, and it also includes envelope. So in future releases of Sentinel Cloud, it would be possible to protect the on-premise part of your application with envelope and then consume that license internally. So the second question is, what makes Sentinel Cloud more secure than an ID plus password? And I think what this means is, I think the question is there's two things. So in a cloud environment, there's authentication and authorization. So authentication means someone's coming into the system, and are they exactly who they are? So I'm saying my name is Bastiaan and my user ID might be 123, and then there's a password that only I know to identify myself. And there's several ways of doing authentication. And basically, the authentication part is not part of Sentinel Cloud because there's so many different authentication solutions that we don't want to fix our customers to using a specific authentication solution. The SafeNet does offer, for example, two-factor authentication, and we're working together with some customers and prospects to offer both the licensing side, the authorization that I'm going to talk about in a bit, and also the authentication part. So it is possible to use both authentication and authorization, but the authentication part is not part of Sentinel Cloud. So Sentinel Cloud does the authorization. So that means we assume that the user that says he's Bastiaan can do feature A, B, and C within those license terms, and then Sentinel Cloud enforces those license terms. So it doesn't check that I am who I say I am, but it does check the licenses and the authorization parts of the system. So the next question is, can you tell something about how a current user for your on-premise solution could migrate to the hybrid approach, and what modifications would be needed? That's a very good question as well. And like I mentioned, for the on-premise part of the security in the hybrid environment, we're using the HASP technology. So if a customer is already using this HASP or LDK technology, then they would have their specific vendor code or their specific batch code. And what we could do is, or what we already do, is embed the HASP or LDK APIs inside the Sentinel Cloud runtime. So the Sentinel Cloud runtime performs license checks for specific batch code and vendor code. So what we could do for those customers is basically generate a Sentinel Cloud runtime package that embeds the HASP APIs for the customer's vendor code. So they could leverage this their existing batch code and basically gradually move parts of the software to the cloud and use Sentinel Cloud on the for licensing. Okay, there's another question coming in. Does authorization and use monitoring is something which can be easily integrated in cloud applications by us developers? What's the extra value of Sentinel Cloud? Well, there's a couple of things that I can say about that, and that's true. And we hear that a lot from customers and prospects that we talk to. They say, well, we're a development company, we're a software company, we can develop stuff ourselves. So there's that's the typical build versus buy discussion. So do you want to spend your resources on something that's not your core business? So if your core business is developing financial software, then you don't want to spend your valuable resources on licensing and on usage tracking and on authorization. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that Sentinel Cloud is a very scalable solution. So which means if you're a startup company now and maybe you don't have a lot of users yet, then it might not be an issue. You can develop something yourself, and performance is not really an issue yet. But as you start to grow and maybe offer your service to thousands of users, then the scalability and the performance impact of licensing could be an issue. And this is where Sentinel Cloud is very strong at. So it's very easy to scale up and to create several instances of Sentinel Cloud Connect and offer the licensing from all over the world without a major impact on performance. And the last thing that I'd like to mention is the functionality, for example, for concurrent licenses. So maybe expiration dates and subscription licenses are quite easy to handle yourselves. But if you think about concurrent licenses, so let's say that there's one of your customers is a worldwide company that consumes your service from several locations all around the world, and they've got a license for 1,000 concurrent users. So 1,000 users can use the service at the same time, but no more than that. So how are you going to manage that? And especially if you think about what I just said about performance and about several licensing servers all around the world, how are you going to make sure that those servers sync up and that the customer actually stays in compliance? So if you think about those types of license models, then licensing can become a bit more complex than just the simple subscription models. And one last thing that pops into my mind is the actual hybrid thing that I'm talking about today. So how are you going to support a licensing solution that can handle both on-premise and cloud-based licenses, and how are you going to secure the license if it goes offline in the on-premise space? How are you going to track the usage information and make sure that it gets sent to your backend? I hope that answered the question. It was quite kind of lengthy. The last question is there support for a pay-as-you-go model for end users, paying credit and consuming this on the go in the product upon certain actions in the product? And the answer is yes. We call it a prepaid license model. and this basically allows you to sell your customers the credits, as you call them. So it could be that a customer buys 1,000 credits, and if he uses the print function, that takes 10 credits, and if he uses the analyze function, it takes 100 credits, and if he does something else, it takes only 1 credit. So you can decide how many credits something takes. And there's some other thing. We also support what we call a grace license model, which means that let's say the customer bought 1,000 credits, and so what are you going to do when he consumed all 1,000 credits? Are you going to deny service, which is a very bad customer experience, or are you going to allow him some grace period or grace time? So with Sentinel Cloud, what you can do, and this is another thing that's not very easy to build yourselves, is to capture that the customer has used all his credits, and then set up a grace number of credits that he can use. And as soon as the customer goes into grace mode, so he basically consumed all the credits, you can automatically send out an email to the customer, or maybe to some people internally, to notify them that they're in grace. And so the salespeople of the software vendor can follow up with the customer, and the customer himself will also be notified that he's actually out of compliance right now. So there's several options there, and I hope this answers the question. Okay. Thanks all for joining, and I hope it was useful for you guys. And I'm sure if there's any other questions that pop up, please feel free to contact us. I think you've all received an email from SafeNet, so I'm sure there's some contact information in that email. So if you have any questions, please feel free to share, and we'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Right, thank you very much. I'm going to end this webcast and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.